Masechet Megilah Daf Kafchet. We started a series of statements about various rabbis who achieved longevity, and their students asked them, by what merit do they have that they achieve such a long life? So let's see some examples, and hopefully we'll pick up some good advice. Shalu Talmidav et Rabbi Perida. B'meherach tayamim amar lahem yamai lo kedamani adam lebet hamidrash. Rabbi Perida says, how come you live so long? He says, in my life, no one ever came to the Bet Midrash before me. So the coming to early to the Bet Midrash, it's a good midah keneged midah. People always in such in a rush, and there's no time to do anything. But come early to the Bet Midrash, spend those extra few minutes, and don't worry, he gets long life. And he never said what led the zimun for Birkat Hamazon in the presence of a kohen. He always gave the honor to a kohen, so that's nice to give a kohenim an honor. And he never ate from an animal without taking the sections of the animal that should go to a kohen. Technically, this would apply to consecrated animals, that the kohen gets those pieces. But it seems like he's doing it even for regular meat. He wants to give the kohanim their portions even after the Bet HaMikdash is destroyed, and so that's a nice thing to give the kohanim honor again in another way. Then we're going to elaborate on it. Yochanan says you're not allowed to eat from an animal that you didn't set aside the parts that go to the kohen, the front leg, the jaw, the more right leg. And furthermore, Yitzchak says, if you eat from an animal without giving the kohen his due, it's like eating produce that's tebel, that you did not take terumah and maaser, which does apply even now. However, halacha is not so, not like it be Yitzchak, not like it be Yochanan, and one does not actually have to give sections of an animal that is not consecrated to the kohen. Nevertheless, he went above and beyond the law, and he did that. Now, I mentioned that he didn't say Birkat Hamazon in front of, he didn't lead Birkat Hamazon in front of a kohen. Hold on, is that really even a good thing to do? He says, anyone who is a sage and he allows someone else to lead the Birkat Hamazon, even if the person who is allowing to lead is the Kohen Gadol, but that Kohen Gadol is not Ama Aretz, it's not proper. In other words, someone is a sage, then the sage should take the honor, because it's really the honor of the Torah that he is going first and leading in the Zimun. And if a person doesn't do that and he forgoes his own honor and honor of the Torah, then he would be chayav mitah. Pretty serious, just for giving someone else an honor of Zimun. Shenemar kol mesanai ahabu mavet, al tikre mesanai ela masniai. Those who hate Hashem will deserve. They love death. Okay, that's true. And also we learn it as not those who hate, but those who cause others to hate. Not literally, but in a way, yes, because by giving honor to someone who's Amaretz, then he's degrading the honor of Torah. And then people around who are sitting there say, oh, I guess the honor of Torah is not so great. The honor of just a regular Kohen is greater. The honor of someone who's rich is greater. No, we should give honor to those who are knowledgeable in Torah, and that will bring people to love Torah and respect it more, and therefore love Hashem. So that's the contradiction. How could it be Perida do that and not give it to a kohen and not take it himself? Oh, he only did it when it was two people of equal stature. He was there, and there was another person, a kohen there, who was equal in his level of Torah. Fine. In that case, give it to the kohen, when all else being equal. Shalu Talmidav Rabbi Nechonya ben Hakana b'meherach tayamim. The students of Rabbi Nechonya asked him, "How come you live so long?" Amar lahem yamai lo nitkabadeti b'kalon haverai. He says, "I never received honor on account of the degradation of my fellow man." We'll see an example of that. That you put yourself up on the back of someone else being down. I never went to sleep angry with the thoughts of cursing my colleagues in my mind. I forgave everyone before I went to sleep. Also, I was foregoing with my money. I was generous and I would give open-handedly. Now we're going to explain. What does that mean? So one time, for example, Rav Huna was carrying a hoe on his shoulder, and Rav Hana bar Hanila came and he said, "Let me carry this hoe for you, right? You're my teacher, great master. You shouldn't have to carry something in public." And so Rav Huna said, says, listen, if you are accustomed to carry something like a hoe in your own town, then fine, I will allow you to help me out with it. However, if not, if you needed to bring a hoe, shovel, someone one place to another, if you wouldn't do it yourself because it's above your honor, and then I don't let you do it for me. I don't want to have honor by a degradation of yourself, right? If you would do it anyway, then that is fine. Okay, so that's a good example. כי הדמר זוטרה, כי הבסליק לפוריה אמר, שרילה לכל מן דסעדן. And I would never go upon my bed with a curse of my colleague on my mind. For example, Mor Zutra would do this. Whenever he would go to his bed, he would say, Sharile, I forgive anyone who caused me any suffering. Every night. We have a custom, we do that on Yom Kippur. That's even nicer to do it every night as part of Kriyat Shema al Hamita. ותרן בממוני הייתי דאמר מור, איוב ותרן בממוני הווה שהיה מניח פירוטה לכן ואני מממונה. To be foregoing, generous with one's money. For example, the master said that Yov, he was like that, and he would always leave a little change, a tip for the shopkeeper, right? Take a penny, leave a tip here, right? So he'd always leave something for the shopkeeper. It's a small amount, but nevertheless, it wasn't exacting on change. If it was, $9.95, keep the change. Sha'al Rabbi Akiva et Rabbi Nechunya Hagadol. Malo b'meharachta yamim. So Rabbi Akiva goes to Rabbi Nechunya, the elder, and he says, by what merit do you have to live such a long life? Atu gavzeh kamachule. This is a great story. His attendants, gavzeh, literally it means eunuchs, because eunuchs were often used as attendants. Probably in this case, it just came to mean any servants or attendants. So the servants of Rabbi Nechunya come and they start beating Rabbi Akiva because they found his question disrespectful. You go to someone and say, "Wow, how come you're so old?" Right? It's not a very nice thing to say, and it sounds like you're like, it sounds like almost a curse. Like, why are you still around? Right? How do you live to be so old like you are? So the servants thought that was not nice. They start beating him up. Rabbi Akiva goes and climbs up a date palm to get away from them. So Rabbi Akiva, all the way on top of the palm tree, calls down to Rabbi Nechunya and he says, "Wait, I have a question. How come regarding the Korban Tamid it says kebes ha'echad? It's a kebes echad, right? Why did it say one sheep? Kebes is already in singular, so just say kebes, and I'll know that it's only one." Amar lehu Surbam Rabbanan who Shabkuhu Rabbi Yochanan says, "Oh, I see. This guy he's not a wise guy, just trying to be annoying. Rather, he is a sage, and he's asking a serious question." Oh, so okay, leave him alone. Let him come down from the tree, and let's have a conversation. So he answers him. This teaches the extra word one, that it should be not any old lamb, but you should pick the best one of the flock. You have a flock, and you're going to pick one for the Korban Tamid. Pick one that's the best. Good. Amale miyamai. And now that regarding your other question, now I see that you're a serious Talmid Chacham. You came not to make fun of me that I'm so old, but rather you came because you really want to know and learn Torah and understand. So I will give you good advice. Miyamai lo kibalti matanot. I never accepted a gift. Right? There's no gift without strings attached. And I was never particular about what is owed to me. I was foregoing about my honor. And also I was generous with my money. Well, here's some examples. We bring examples of other sages that also had this trait. When the house of the Nasi, right, he's the patriarch, the head of the Jewish community. So most people, he's also very wealthy and he has a lot of power and charge. When the Nasi's house would send a gift to the Bi'al Azad, he refused it. Because I think he didn't refuse like gifts, but in particular, when you accept from the house of the Nasi, then you're attached to them, you're dependent on them, and there was always a lot of politics and sometimes some tension between the individual rabbis and the house of the Nasi. So he didn't want anything from them. Don't do me any favors. And also, when the house of the Nasi would invite a Bi'al Azad over for a meal, he wouldn't go. He didn't want to be indebted to them. And the way his excuse was, he said, what, you don't want me to live? He who hates gifts will live. So if you would give me a gift and I accept it, then you want me to die, right? You don't want me to live? There's pasuk in Mishleh. Okay. Rabbi Zera did the same thing. When he would get a gift from the house of the Nasi, he wouldn't accept it. However, when he got an invitation to go and eat there, he would go, because he reasoned, I'm not doing them, they're not doing me a favor, I'm doing them a favor. Me, by going there, I am honoring them with my presence. And so therefore, I won't feel indebted to them. It'll be quite the opposite, that I will go and show myself there. And so he didn't feel like that was a problem of the same as taking a gift. Okay, I remember some people who were sold to some stores, big chains. If they sent a gift, the chain would send back, you received your gift, we destroyed it. Right? They didn't want their buyers to have to be indebted to any of the wholesalers. Okay, velo amadati al middotai damarava kol ma'abir al middotai ma'abirin mimenu. Also, I never stood my ground in terms of my honor. I was always foregoing, even if someone insulted me and owed me an apology. As Rava says, anyone who forgoes what's coming to him in his honor, then from Hashem, from Shamayim, they will forego that person's sins. As it says, for whom will Hashem bear the burden of their sins? For someone who forgoes a transgression that someone else does to them. Therefore, midah keneged midah, the way that we are forgiving with others, so too Hashem will be forgiving with us. Sha'al Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha, by what merit do you have to live so long? Amar le, Kasta bechayai. Says what? Well, you're done with me already, right? You think I've lived long enough? You're sick of me, that you want me to die, that you're asking such a question? This is how come you live so long already, right? Amar lo Rabbi Torahi v'lemodani sadich. Says no, that's not how I meant the question. You're my rabbi. This is Torah. I need to know good advice on how to live so that one can live long. Okay, fine. I never looked at a wicked person. And the problem here is not simply looking at like a picture of them, but when you look at, you have to go and meet, and then you're giving some honor to a wicked person, and you're supporting wickedness, right? Don't meet them. Don't look at them. You see them in the street. Let's go the other way. Don't give them any recognition. Person should not look at, here it's even more, even at the likeness of a wicked man. Maybe just by looking at him, you kind of think about he might be influenced by his thoughts. This is when Yehoshaphat and King Yehoram, they got together to make a war against Moab, and they called the Navi. And Navi says, if not for the face of Yehoshaphat, who was a good king, I would not come to see you, Yehoram, the evil king, right? Which shows that only because there's a good king there, that's why he came. Otherwise, he would avoid the presence of an evil person. In that context, that's the point, that he doesn't want to give honor to an evil king by coming to him and have a meeting with him. Rabbi Elazar Amar was not going to listen to him anyway. Rabbi Elazar Amar, enav kehot shene'emar v'hi kizaken Yitzchak v'tichena enav meraot bishum distakel be'esav harasha. Also, this person, a person who sees a countenance of an evil person, that person's eyes will become dim. And we see that Yitzchak, when he became old, his eyes became dim. He couldn't see. Why? Because when he was younger, he had to look at Esav harasha. And so that made his eyes dim. Hold on, question. Is that what caused Yitzchak to go blind? We have another reason, another midrash. Right, it happens to be the Yitzchak, who's telling us why Yitzchak is blind. We saw this once before recently, that a curse of even a commoner, even if not a prophet, should not be light in your eyes. Avimelech, means not a commoner, he's head of a country, but nevertheless he's a commoner compared to Navi. Even Avimelech kilel et Sarah v'nitkayem bezarah. He cursed Sarah, and it didn't happen. Some bad thing didn't happen to Sarah, but it happened to her child, Yitzchak. This is after Abraham and Sarah are with Avimelech, and Abraham says, Sarah, oh, she is my sister, and Avimelech takes her, and then he has all kinds of problems and diseases, and he sends her away, and he gives her this some jewelry, and he says, this jewelry will be for you as a kisut einayim. A simple reading of that is it's going to be some kind of eye jewelry, some kind of veil that would go over the eyes. And so this is a beautiful thing, but the midrash is taking it saying, this should be for you a cause of blindness. Abimelech is saying, you tricked me and blinded me, that you told me you were his sister, but instead of his wife, and caused me this. Therefore, there should be covering of your eyes in your family. And sure enough, this is the source. This is the reason why Yitzchak became blind in his old age. So we see a different reason, not because Yitzchak used to look at Esav. So which one is it? Which is the real reason? And the answer is both of them. One by itself, maybe it wouldn't have happened, but both of these, because there was a predisposition from his mother, and Yitzchak himself looked at Esav. That is why. We can learn it from another pasuk in Mishleh, that to gaze upon an evil person is not good. We don't want to receive that influence by looking at the person. When Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha was dying, he said to Amar le, Rabbi Baracheni. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, my teacher, please give me a blessing. His blessing is, may you live half of my days. This is a very strange blessing. I mean, how old was he? Whatever, he lived to a long age. Maybe he lived till 100. So may you live a half of my days till 50. Well, so the bee is complaining. What kind of blessing is that? Are you giving a blessing only half your days? And so the teacher's response is, what about your kids? Right? He's the Biuda Nasi, is the Nasi. And the Nasi is a lifetime position. After he dies, it goes to his son. He says, I'm worried about your sons. What are your sons going to do their whole life? If you live till 120, right? And then your sons are going to be 90. And still, what are they going to do that whole time? They're just going to tend cattle, right? You have to give a chance for your children to take leadership positions. And the longer you stick around, then you're going to be the leader, and your kid's not going to have any leadership experience. So that's my blessing, that you should retire early. Okay, that's it. There's nothing else said about that story. Very interesting. Abu bar Ihi uminyamin bar Ihi. Chad amarti tili de la istakali begoy. Vechad amarti tili de la avadi shutafut behade goy. Okay, these two children of Ihi, they said, one of them said, I deserve reward because I never looked upon a non-Jew. And the other says, I deserve reward because I never made a business partnership with a non-Jew. The problem there is, first, these non-Jews are probably idolaters. And if you make a business deal with them, and then they're going to say, wait, did you do this? Did you promise, right? Did you promise to my God? And then he's going to put the Jew into a situation where he's going to have to promise to some idolatrous God. Okay, it says Goy here. If you look in the Vilna printed edition, the regular printed edition, it says Kuti instead of Goy. That's because of censors. The Christians thought anytime is Goy is referring to Christians, which it's not. I mean, it's not. It's talking about anyone, or especially an idolater. So therefore, they changed it to Kuti, meaning a Samaritan. However, all manuscripts say Goy, and that's one of the benefits of this current edition here, that they revert back to the correct wording Goy rather than Kuti. Sha'alu Talmidav et Rabbi Zera, Bamerach Tayamim, the students asked Rabbi Zera, how come you live so long? I never got angry in my house and yelled at the members of my household. Nor did I ever walk ahead of someone who is greater than me. Right? This is out of respect. Someone greater, you should walk behind them. And I never even thought about Torah in a disgusting place that's smelly, in which you're not allowed to think about Torah in such a place. I never walked 4 amot without either thinking about Torah or wearing tefillin. There's some tension between these two, because if he doesn't work 4 amot without Torah, then how can he? What does he do when he gets to a filthy place? Maybe he'd try to avoid those filthy places, so that he wouldn't have to stop thinking about Torah. I never fell asleep in the Bet Midrash. Right, he's such a good matmid that he learns all the time and doesn't just fall asleep. It's not respectful to fall asleep there. I wasn't happy when my colleague stumbled. My colleague, he's either he trips or he makes a mistake in the halacha, and you say, look how dumb he is. So I was never happy about that. I was supportive by my friends. I never called a friend by a derogatory nickname. Like we saw this come up a few times, nor by even a regular nickname, even if it's not derogatory. Generally, even if people don't say so, they generally like to be called by their regular names. All right, so that ends the series of people who lived a long life, and all the good advice that they have for that. Next, Mishnah ve'od amar Rabbi Yehuda bet haKnesset shecharev en maspidim betocho. A bet knesset, even if it fell into ruin, you're not allowed to make eulogies in it. This is true for a regular bet knesset also, right? And generally, that is the halacha, that one does not make eulogies, funerals in a bet knesset. Ve'en mafshilin betocho chavelin. Also, to stretch out and repair ropes, to twist ropes. To do that, you need a large area, because you got these long ropes and you want to twist them. And so bet knesset is useful because it's a big area, big open space. Nevertheless, that's not what a bet knesset is used for. It's for tefillah and Torah, and not for manufacturing. And even if it's in ruins and empty, you don't lay a net in it to trap animals, right, or to fix it. As even though it's a large open space, it might be ruins, it might be a bet knesset that's just either empty or dilapidated or razed to the ground. Nevertheless, it retains its kedusha. Or if it's there and it has a roof, even if it's not used, you can't use the roof to dry out fruit. No matter what, you cannot make the bet knesset into a shortcut and go from one side, one street to another through the bet knesset. That's not what it's for. And in general, anything that's kadosh cannot be instrumentalized. You have to use it for itself, for its holy purpose, and you can't use it for any personal gain. We learn this from Pasuk in Vayikra, as I will bring desolation to your holy places. You see, they're still called holy places, even after they are destroyed. And so therefore, a Bet Knesset, even if it's in ruins, still retains its holiness. If it's all dilapidated and broken down, and now grass and weeds start growing in it, don't remove the weeds, because we want people to see, and they will cause them anguish, and that's good. People will say, can you believe what happened to this Bet Knesset? It used to be thriving, and now look, weeds are growing. And maybe if enough people feel anguish, they'll get together and they will actually fix and rebuild the Bet Knesset. Good. Gemara, Tidun Banan, Bate Knesiot, and Nohagin Bahen, Kalut Rosh. And Ochlin Bahen, Ben Shotin Bahen, Ven Neotin Bahen, Ben Metailin Bahen. So this is a braita that's expanding on the Mishnah and says, Bet Knesset, any Bet Knesset, this is talking about a regular one that's being used. We should not be lightheaded in them. And we don't eat or drink in a Bet Knesset. This is important halakha that sometimes is not always followed strictly. And also don't adorn oneself and, comb your hair, make yourself look nicer in a Bet Knesset. And or just to hang out, wander around, do some exercise, and get those steps in. And you don't go in there because it's hot out and you're looking for shade, or because it's raining out and you don't want to get rained on. This is not, you don't use it as all these are for personal gain. And also a eulogy for an individual. That is not proper, right? You're using it. This is not a prayer event. It's not a Torah event. Okay, so it's very important, but not the use of a Bet Knesset. Aval korin bahen, vishonin bahen. You can read Tanakh in it. You can recite halachot, mishnayot in it. Umaspidin bahen hesped shel rabim. And you can make a eulogy for the public. If there's going to be a lot of people there for a Torah scholar who dies, someone important, that a lot of people are going to come and benefit from hearing the speeches from a sage and so on, then it is permitted. All that was referring to a Bet Knesset that's occupied and used. But if it's in ruins, then we leave it and don't use it altogether, and we allow weeds to grow, and you can't remove them so that people will feel anguish. So you see, this is building on the Mishnah and giving more examples. Okay, now question on this braita, asabim mandachar shemayhu. There's something wrong with it. If you didn't have the Mishnah, then it would be really hard to understand what Abi was talking about. It says, when is this true b'yishuvan? First of all, that's not true. These things are not allowed even after it's in ruins, right? And then it says, then you leave it and you should what? You should make grass grow? Is that where'd you talk about grass? That all of a sudden you're giving us laws about what you should do with it, right? There's a disconnect here. And so, I mean, it makes sense if it's building on the Mishnah. But so here's the right way to understand it. These are the words are missing, and this is what it means to say. When Bet Knesset is occupied and being used, then you should broom it, and you should sprinkle water on the floor. They had dust floors, kind of like if you ever have a clay tennis court, right? You have to brush it, and then you put sprinklers on it, and then that way the dust settles down, and that's where they clean. That's how they clean their floors. And so you do that so that weeds will not grow in it. That's the proper thing to do. And then the Biuda adds, when should you make sure that weeds don't grow? When the Bet Knesset is occupied in use. But if it's in ruins, then let the weeds grow. And if they did grow, don't remove them so that people will feel anguish and then hopefully come back and rebuild. Amar Rav Asi, Bate Knesiot shebeBavel al tenai henesu. Is very interesting that when they would build a Bet Knesset in Bavel, they would do it on condition that if this should ever fall into disuse, then we will not be kadosh. It's the second that you build it and say this is a Bet Knesset, then it has all these strictures that we just mentioned. So we make it on condition that it won't have such holiness of a Bet Knesset, and it will not be permanent. And if we need if it becomes ruined one day, then it'll be okay. Or even now, while we're using it, where it won't have the full kedusha because, it seems to be easier to do in Bavel as a kind of lesser level of kedusha. Okay, this is applicable today. A lot of times, if you have a main sanctuary, that's obviously Bet Knesset. But a lot of synagogues have other rooms that are sometimes used for minyan, sometimes used for a party, sometimes used to eat breakfast, and they use for all kinds of things. And now, so if you put an Aron Kodesh in there and they use it for a Bet Knesset one time, and now that has kedusha Bet Knesset, now you can't use it for anything else. So that kind of thing is good to make a condition. Listen, we're going to use it for prayer sometimes, but we're not designating it officially as a Bet Knesset so that you can have a social hall. Okay. And even so, even though in Bavel they did make a condition, and so fine, maybe you can eat and drink or some things, but to be lightheaded, no matter what, is not proper. What do we mean about being lightheaded? This refers to making business calculations. You come and have a business meeting in the middle of a Bet Knesset, right? It says, "Oh, this is my share. What do you get? How much?" That's totally improper. If you have a Bet Knesset in which you do business calculations in it, by the way, we're not talking about for tzedakah. That is permitted, right? You want to decide who's going to get the funds. How do we do that? That's for public good. We're talking about for personal business things. So any Bet Knesset that they use to have business meetings in, you will also have to use it to house dead bodies. We ask, wait, could that you really mean that? Is there no other place that you would put them? Don't you have a morgue or something? The point is that this is a consequence that because of doing this, in the end, there'll be a case where you'll have a body that there's no one to bury it, a met mitzvah, and no one's going to take care of it, and then the Bet Knesset is going to be the only place that you can find because nobody wants to pay to take care of the body, and so if you disrespect the Bet Knesset, you will have more cause for it to be disrespected itself. Okay, you're not allowed to put on makeup or brush your hair, make yourself look nice in the Bet Knesset. You should look nice before you get Bet Knesset, not in the Bet Knesset. The sages and their students, they are allowed. If they need to, fix their tie or whatever, brush their hair, they can do that. We call the Bet Knesset the house of the sages, right? And usually it's in Semichut, in Hebrew, Bayit is a house, Bet Midrash, Bet Knesset, Bet Sefer is in Semichut, the house of something. In Aramaic, Beta is the standalone form of a house. Be something is Rabbanan. So the point is, we're undoing the Semichut to show you that the word Be comes from house. It's called the house of the rabbis because they're there all day. They're sitting there, they're studying, and so since they are basically living there. Therefore, you don't have to make them leave if they have to adorn themselves, make themselves look nicer. Since they're there all day anyway, and they're showing their respect and using it for Torah, then it's okay. They can go ahead and brush their hair while they're in there. You don't walk into a Bet Knesset to get shade or to get away from the rain. Here's an example. One time, Ravina and Ravada were standing outside and they were asking a question of Rava. All of a sudden, it started raining. So they went inside into the Bet Knesset. And they justified this by saying that we're not going into the Bet Knesset because of rain, but rather because we're speaking about Torah and halacha. You have to have clarity of mind, and you can only have clarity of mind if you're not worried about the rain falling on your head, right? You have to have a clarity of a day, like you need a clear mind, you need a clear day with a nice northern wind that's keeping you cool. And so if you have bad weather, we're going into Bet Knesset for the purpose of studying Torah, not just to get out of the rain, and that's why it's permitted. Here's a question. What should you do if you need to call someone from Bet Knesset, right? Someone comes and says, can you get my husband out there? I need to talk to him. So now you're going to go in just to call the person out, but now you're passing through. You're using the Bet Knesset not for its own purpose. You're not going in for prayer or study. You're just going to go use it for a different personal purpose. So how would you do that? And the answer is, if the person is knowledgeable, so let him come to the Bet Knesset and recite a halacha by heart, because a Mishnah that he knows by heart, and then that's good. But the first one is if he knows the halacha, he knows something in depth. The second one is if he's just a memorizer, he doesn't know the deep meaning, the meanings of the halachot, but he memorized of some mishnayot. Fine, so recite a mishnah. If he only knows Tanakh by heart, this was, the low-level guy in those days, right? So fine, say a pasuk. Okay, even if you don't know the whole Tanakh by heart, you know something. If he knows nothing by heart, so remember, there's no books. So go to a child who's studying there and says, please tell me, give me a pasuk. What pasuk are you studying? And the kid will say, pasuk, good. Now he learned something in the Bet Knesset, and now we can go in and call someone. If there's not even that, so he should just remain in the Bet Knesset for a little while, a few seconds. After all, it says, Ashrei Yoshevei Betecha, right? Praiseworthy are those who even just sit in the Bet Knesset, just enjoying the holiness of the atmosphere. One feels uplifted, and even that is something. So do something in there, and then go ahead and do your errand, whatever it is. And so this would be, true if you have to, go in and go through a Bet Knesset or get some Bet Knesset or whatever it is. Don't just do that, but also stop for a few seconds and have some Torah learning in there. You are allowed to have a eulogy that's for the benefit of the public. For example, so we want to know an example. So Rav Chisda made a gesture to show what he means. Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshat were there together. So when the student asked, what does it mean to have a public eulogy? Rav Chisda pointed to Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat pointed to Rav Chisda, for example, him. Okay, what do they mean by that? I think there's two interpretations. One is if either one of these sages passed away, then, and that would be a public eulogy because everybody's going to want to come to them. I don't like that explanation because that suggests that each one is pointing to the other and maybe they're doing it in a funny way. Rather, I think a better explanation is that if either one was speaking at a eulogy, that itself would make it a public eulogy because everybody, Rav Sheshat is speaking for, at whatever person's eulogy. That person must have, some standing for Rav Sheshat to come and give the hesped. But since he's coming, a lot of people are going to want to come and they're going to want to hear, and he's going to say important words of Musad, Divrei Torah. And so therefore that is a public benefit that you're allowed to do in the Bet Knesset because it's you're doing it for a good cause, for a holy purpose, for the benefit of everyone. Here's some more examples. So Raflam eulogized his daughter-in-law in the synagogue, and he said, first of all, because of my honor or the honor of the deceased, a lot of people are going to come either to hear me, right, or because they know the daughter-in-law. So even if the daughter-in-law herself was not the great person of the generation, either the eulogizer or the deceased is sufficient to bring a crowd. Then it's a public. It is considered a public need. Rabbi Zera, he gave a eulogy for a certain sage in his Benet Knesset. Whether it be because of my honor or because of the honor of the deceased, either way, we're expecting a lot of people here, and so it was permitted to do it in the Bet Knesset. Okay, this is important because different communities have different customs. In the Spanish Portuguese, they only did in Sherith Israel. They only made a funeral in the Bet Knesset for either the rabbi of the synagogue or someone who was a previous parnas, a president of it. So that's considered public good. So that there it depended on the deceased. But in the Syrian community, we have a custom that developed. I don't know if it was ever officially authorized that we have our funerals in the old, mostly disused Bet Knesset in Bensonhurst, and this came to be done. Maybe because it was done for important people, and then not everybody's important. But the truth is that even however important the deceased is, usually you have rabbis, important people coming and speaking also, and they benefit from that. So maybe there is some halachic justification based on this for that practice, even though most communities do not do that. Okay, Reshakish Sefadeh lahu subhana b'rabanan t'shechich b'ad Yisrael. Davi taneh helcheta be'sim v'arba shurata. Resh Lakish, he himself went and made a eulogy for a certain sage who used to come to Eretz Yisrael. He didn't live in Eretz Yisrael, but he would come often. So Resh Lakish knew him. Resh Lakish lived in Israel, and this sage, he learned just halachot. He wasn't, not a super in-depth person, and he was in the back of the 24th row. He was like in the lowest class. The smarter the person was, they would go to the front row. So he just barely made it all the way in the back row. So even though he was not the greatest sage, nevertheless, Shakish says he knows some halachot, he knows some mishnayot by heart. So he deserves a eulogy. Amar vai chasra rad Israel gabrada ba. Woe to a land of Israel that has lost a great man. Even though he didn't even live in Israel, he didn't know that much. But nevertheless, even some halachot that he knows, that's a great contribution that he lost. Hahu dehave taneh hilcheta sifra v'sifre v'tosefta ushchiv. And by contrast, there was another man. He knew everything, not only the regular halachot, the mishnayot. He knew the sifre. That's the midrash halacha on the books of the Torah. Very difficult. Not everybody knows that. Very difficult, and to know it means he knew it by heart. Tosefta, he knew the other Tanaitic statements, and he died. Atuv amru le the Rab Nachman. So now this is going on in Bavel. They told Nachman that this person died. This pidemor. So Rab Nachman said. So they asked him, "Can you make a eulogy for him? He was a great sage, right? He knew. I don't know anybody that knows all of this by heart." Or even knows all of this. So Amar Hechi Nispede. Rav Nachman says, what am I going to say? What am I going to say in this eulogy? Hai Sanad Dimle Sifre de Hasad. A great line. This is, we lost a bag of books, right? Who cares? So what that he knew it by heart? He was not really a great sage. What you see here is that in Bavel, unlike in Eretz Yisrael, they respected someone who memorized a lot. This was very important, right? And a lot of people were impressed when you see someone memorize a lot. That shows greatness, but not in Bavel. In Bavel, they prized mostly dialectical ability, the ability to ask a question, to ask many questions, to resolve the questions, to challenge, to notice comparisons, right? I mean, all the shakla v'tarya that we find in the Bavli, which is even so much greater and difficult than in the Yerushalmi. So he says, this person, he knew everything by heart. So what? It's a bag of books, right? I have everything on my phone. That's all the text. I could just open it up. They didn't have that, but right, that was easy to come by just to memorize it. It was not so respected. So he says, well, I have nothing to say for his eulogy. Okay, it's a fantastic story. Shows you the type of learning that they valued. Tachazi, and the Gemara itself now reflects on this and says, Tachazi ma ben tekifed al ad Yisrael lechasidei Bavel. Look at the contrast between the strong ones, the harsh ones of Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, Resh Lakish was known for his harsh nature. When it comes to this, you see how easygoing he is, and he's tolerant and open to give honor to someone, even though he only learned some halachot. Whereas the so-called Hasidim of Bavel, who are so saintly, which they are and great, but look how Rav Nachman treats disrespectfully and is so harsh about this person who otherwise knows everything. Okay, so this is probably this is an interesting line because it's in the Talmud Bavli, and yet it's derogatory about the people of Bavel as opposed to Eretz Yisrael. So this must be a later gloss about some earlier time, but we see what the values were in that earlier time. That's a very important Gemara. Okay, Tenan Hatam, we learned the Mishnah Pirkei Avot, Ude Ishtamesh Betagah Halaf. That's one who makes use of the crown of the Torah will perish, right? Tagah is also like in Arabic, Taj, That's what we call the Aleppo, the crown of Aleppo. The Aleppo Codex was called there the Taj. So that's another name for a Torah. Someone who makes use of the crown, meaning of Torah, for his own personal benefit, will perish. Taneh Resh Lakish, Zeh Mishtamesh B'mi Sheshoneh Halachot. Okay, so I mean, the Peshat is talking about someone who uses his own Torah knowledge, like he says, let me cut in front of the line, let me get a discount because I'm a Torah sage or something like that. But here the Resh Lakish says this applies to someone who makes use of someone who knows halacha, and so he allows himself to get a favor from a great sage. Kitra shel Torah. Because that person, a person walking around who knows Torah, that person is himself the crown of the Torah. So here's an example of a story. It's a person should better make use of, meaning ask a favor from, someone who has studied 4 of the 6 Sedarim of Mishnah, and not make use of, meaning get a favor from, someone who has taught 4 of the 6 Sedarim of Mishnah. Okay, first of all, this is very interesting, just the fact that it talks about 4 out of the 6, because we know we have only 4. We have Masechtot of Talmud Bavli. We have the commentary of Talmud Bavli only on 4 Sedarim of the Mishnah. Right? We don't have any on Zira'im and not on Taharot, which were not really relevant. Those halachot were not relevant and therefore not studied so as much, and not studied in the regular curriculum in Bavel. Kodashim technically also was not really relevant in Bavel or after the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. And nevertheless, the idea was if we study the laws of Korbanot, it's like we do bring Korbanot, and so that was studied, and we do have a Talmud Bavli on that. Although not Talmud Yerushalmi. Talmud you do have Zira'im, because that was relevant in Eretz Yisrael, but not Kodashim. So fascinatingly, in both Talmud and Bavli and Yerushalmi, we have 4 Sedarim covered. And so, did we lose the other 2? And the answer is no, likely not. They never existed. And you can tell that from here, where you see that the common thing was for people to study 4 of the 6 Sedarim or teach 4 of the 6 Sedarim. Okay, so this is a great source to remember here. And the point here is that someone who taught is on a high level, who learned the 4 Sedarim, he knows them by heart, right? That person is a high level. Even higher level is someone not only who learned it himself, but has taught it. And so, if you see someone like that, then you should do them an honor. Don't allow them to do a favor and honor for you. Resh Lakish, the great sage, was walking on the way, and he got to a pool of water. So some person comes and puts Resh Lakish on his shoulder, so Resh Lakish doesn't have to get wet, and he will carry him over the water. While he's being carried through this water, karit. Resh Lakish asked the person, do you know Tanakh? Amar le, Karena, yes, I know Tanakh. He probably knows it by heart. Okay, that's no big deal. Everybody knows Tanakh by heart, right? Tenet, have you studied Torah Sheba'al Peh? Have you studied Mishnayot? Tenena arba sidre Mishnah. Yes, I know by heart 4 Sedarim of Mishnah. Amar le, pesalt lach arba'a tureh. Bad Lakisha Katfech. Resh Lakish says, you have hewn 4 mountains. I mean, this is really a big job to study Mishnah by heart, and you have done this for 4 Sedarim, and yet you bear the weight of Resh Lakish, meaning me, upon your shoulder, the son of Lakish, me upon your shoulders. Shedeh bad Lakisha b'maya. Throw me into the water, right? In other words, Resh Lakish, he thought he was just a regular guy who was helping him out. Now that I realize that this person is a Talmid Chacham, he does not want to receive honor from the crown of Torah. And this person who's carrying him, he himself is an embodiment of the crown of Torah. So throw me overboard, right? I don't want to make use of you. Amar le nichali dashme'inan lemor. Says, no, it's pleasing for me that I can serve the master in this way. I want to. Don't worry about it. So Resh Lakish, okay, he's staying on. All right, if so, and we're going to continue on this journey, at least let me teach you something of Torah that I learned from Rabbi Zera. This is Benot Yisrael henechmiru al asman she'afilu ro'ot tipat dam kechardal yoshevot alav shiv'a nekiyim. This is an important principle in the laws of Nida. This is that the women of Israel, they took upon themselves a stringency that even if they see a drop of blood, small, a tiny size of a mustard seed, nevertheless, they consider that full Nida and Zava, and they have to wait 7 clean days. This is a huge stringency. First of all, because it's a tiny dot, less than the required amount. Furthermore, what is she going to be if she is in the time of nida during her regular menstrual period when she expects it? Then if she sees any amount of blood, she would be tameh for 7 days altogether, not 7 clean days. And if she is zava and she sees blood for 1 day, she would only be zava for 1 day. She only becomes zava gedolah if she sees blood 3 days in a row. Then she has to count 7 clean days. So the truth is that according to halacha, she would not, no matter what, she would not have to count 7 clean days just for 1 tiny drop of blood. So this is not the letter of the law. Nevertheless, the daughters of Israel, they took upon themselves the stringency that they would treat even a tiny drop of blood as if it were a lot, and they would keep 7 nikiyim. And this is basically the halacha even until today. Okay, and so this is what he taught while he was carrying him. You wonder, this is to be. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot more to say about that, but not for now. Tana debe Eliyahu kol hashoneh halachot mubtach lo shu ben haolam haba shene'emar halichot olam lo al tikra halichot ela halachot. All right, we say this often, so it's good to know what it means. It was said in the teachings of the house of Eliyahu that anyone who studies halachot, meaning a Mishnah or some practical halacha, every halachot, here it doesn't say bechol yom. Okay, so it is guaranteed that the person will be a member of the world to come. And how do we know this? Because it says in the word in pasuk in Habakkuk, halichot olam lo. So the peshat of it is halichot olam. His ways, the ways of Hashem, are eternal, right? Halichot olam lo. The ways of the world are eternal. Hashem's ways are eternal. But we are going to repunctuate it since in those times they didn't have punctuation. So you can read it not as halichot, but rather as halachot, especially if it's spelled without a yud. And most things were spelled chaser. And so you read halachot, someone who studies halachot, olam lo, that person will be deserving of olam haba, because if a person learns them, then he'll also come to do them, and then he'll lead a proper lifestyle and be deserving of the world to come. So a wonderful way of fulfilling this is daf yomi, when you're guaranteed that you're going to learn some halacha on a daily basis. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.